Right, so let's start with the concepts of object-oriented programming and we'll see how they are used in Selenium. Right, to make you understand the concept, let me make a new class over here. Okay, and I'll suppose I'll name that class like mobile phone. Fine. Right, so this is a class mobile phone, no main method inside it. Right, and I just declare variables inside it, say string name, int number. Fine, so these are the two properties, right, or say model name and number. These are the two properties of a mobile phone. Okay, now we will do something known as, we'll create the object of this mobile phone class. Right, say I go to my temp.java over here. Okay, and I type over here new mobile phone. In a separate temp.java class, I have created the object of the class mobile phone. Fine. Okay. Right. So when I write new mobile phone over here, I'm accessing the mobile phone class over here from temp.java and I'm creating the object of mobile phone class. Now this is the way you create the object, and what happens when you create the object, that is more important. Okay. In memory, a memory block is allocated. Right. Inside that memory block, right, both the properties of mobile phone, that is model number, and what was the other one? I think it was price. Hold on. Yeah, mobile number at int, say price. Sorry. So both these things will be going inside this object. Okay. So if I restore it, model number and price. Okay, both these things will be there in the memory location, and this memory location is known as the object of this class. When you write new mobile phone, this object is created in the memory. Fine, this object gets created inside the memory, and both these properties are there. Similarly, I can create another object. I can create three objects. Right, what will happen is that in memory three objects get created like this. Right, each will have the property model number and price. Okay, but these objects are just hanging in the memory, you cannot access them. To access them, you need to have an object reference. To create object reference, you write like this: mobile phone m1 equals to new mobile phone m2 equals to new mobile phone m3 equals to new mobile phone. m1, m2 and m3 are object references which point towards this object. m1, m2 and m3 are not objects, please note that. Okay, there is a difference between object and object reference. Right, m1 will be, this will be m1, this pointer or object reference would be m2, and this would be m3. With m1, m2 and m3 you can access the objects, or with m1, m2 and m3 you can change the state of the object. Right, okay, what you can do is that you can write over here m1 dot. When you write dot, you get the properties of m1. m1 dot model name is model A. Right, you can type over here m1 dot price is 100. Okay, m2 dot model name is model B. m2 dot price is 200. Okay, m3 dot model name is model C. M3 dot price is 300. So with M1, M2 and M3 you can give a different, you can say state to every object. Okay, right. This will be A, this will model number A, model number B, model number C. It might be a temporary issue, the screen froze. Anyways, so A, B and C would be 3 different mobile phones, model numbers with different prices. Right. The point to note over here is that mobile phone is just one class with 2 variables. But by creating the object of this class, I can actually give a different state to every object. Okay, and these are the 3 objects. M1, M2 and M3 are references to those objects. If I write over here M1 dot model name, print M1 model name, M2 model name and M3 model name. Right, if you run this as logic says, it will print A, B and C. Right, I told you that M1 is not the object, it is object reference. Object reference can move from one object to another. I can write over here M1 equals to M2. What do you mean by M1 equals to M2? By saying M1 equals to M2, M1 will stop pointing towards this object now, and M1 will actually go and point towards this object where M2 is pointing. Okay, M1 will start pointing towards the object to which M2 is pointing. So M1 and M2 will point towards the same object. So if I print system.out.println now, what will this print? Anyone? A general logic. This was printing A, B and C. What will this print? What will this print? Yes, it will print BBC. Because M1 is pointing towards M2. It is not printing AAC, it will print BBC. Right, so when you run this, it prints BBC. If I write on the next line M2 dot model name is Z, what will this print now? What will this be printing? Yes, M2 has changed the model name, but M1 and M2 are pointing towards the same object, right? So when you change this from B to Z, both of them will read Z. So this is the difference between object and object reference. Object is, this is the object and this is the object reference. Object is constant in the memory. It will not move. But object reference can start pointing from one object to another object. Okay? Right? If I write over here mobile phone M5 equals to null, what does this mean? This means that this reference is not pointing towards any object. On the next line I can write M5 equals to new mobile phone. I can make it point towards any object. Okay, right? So this is object and this is object reference. It is very important concept, right? Even developers having 5 or 6 years of experience, they don't know this at times, right? So I hope you got my point. What do you mean by object and what do you mean by object reference? Now, moving ahead. Okay, moving ahead. How do you use this in Selenium? I have my project Selenium enabled. I have all the jar files of Selenium. Look, in Selenium everything is inbuilt. If you open up the Java docs for Selenium, if you go to seleniumhq.org, this is Java doc location. Under download tab, you will see Java doc. This is the Java documentation. Fine, if you go to this, in this documentation on the left hand side, you will see all classes. These are all the inbuilt classes in Selenium. It's very vast. You don't need to learn everything. Even I don't know everything. But you should have the knack, or you should have the skill to read this documentation. Fine. Now if you go to say one of the classes over here, a simple class, a very starter class, it's known as Firefox driver. Okay, this is an inbuilt class. This is responsible for testing Firefox, testing your application on Firefox. Right, I'll just create a new class over here, Selenium Basics. Right, when you download these jar files of Selenium, this class comes up in one of the jar files. This class is present. Okay, you just create the object of this class. You write over here new Firefox driver. Okay, you write new Firefox driver, and what will happen is that if you just create the object of this inbuilt class, you'll have to import it. You'll get an error. You move your mouse over the error and you get the option to import it. You import it in the project. Right, and when you run this, you will automatically see a blank Firefox will open up. You see that? A blank Firefox, it opens up. I hope you are understanding my point. So it's not a rocket science, as I told you again. You just need to know the internal classes and you need to know their functionalities. Right, I can give an object reference to it. I can write Firefox driver f equals to new Firefox driver. So with f, okay, with f, the question being asked is how can we open an object when there is no reference? You cannot access the object if there is no reference. I am creating the reference of Firefox driver now. If I don't create a reference of Firefox driver, if I just write this and execute it, what I get is a blank Firefox window. I cannot do anything with that window. I cannot navigate to a website. I cannot close this window. If there is a link, I cannot click on that link. Right, I can just launch a blank Firefox by creating the object. But if you want to do something with that Firefox object, or if you want to do something with that Firefox which I just opened, you will have to write a reference. With that reference you can control the window. If you write f dot, you will get all the functions which are there in Firefox driver class. Like I had mobile phone, I had these two variables. I could access them by writing the object name dot. Right. If this mobile phone class would have been having a function like public void call, okay, then every object over here, m1, m2, m3 and all, could have access that call function as well. Alright, fine. So every object would be able to access these properties. Okay, similarly in Selenium, when I create the object of Firefox driver, with that object reference, I can access all the functions and properties of the Firefox driver class. These are so many things inside it. To start with, there is a very simple function known as get. This will navigate your Firefox to a certain URL. You can write over here, say http times of india.com. It's a news website. Okay, and if you run this, it will open the browser and it will go to that particular website. You see that it's on that website. Fine. Okay, I can create multiple objects of this Firefox driver. I can create 3 objects, F1, F2, F3. F1 goes to Times of India, F2 goes to Yahoo, and F3 goes to say hotmail.com. Right, so in this case I will have 3 browsers opening up. First will be controlled by F1. It will go to Times of India, you see that? Right. Second one will go to Yahoo. You see that yahoo.com opens up. It's taking time. And third one will go to Hotmail. Right. So you see that Hotmail, it's connecting to mail.hotmail.com. Right, Microsoft's email. Right. So, I hope you understood the crux, what I want to explain you over here. Now the basic mistake which people do, they don't give the protocol. Protocol is very important when you work with Selenium. It's not like QTP or UFT. If you have worked with the UFT, then you know that you just simply write like this and QTP or UFT it works. But in Selenium, protocol is very important. If you don't write HTTP and if you run this program, it will launch Firefox, and after that it will not execute it. It will give you an error. Okay. So target URL Times of India is not well formed. You need to give the protocol. It is very important. This is one of the common mistakes which most of the people do in the beginning. Fine. I hope you are getting my point. I just took a simple browser Firefox and I told you. Fine. Now I'll go back to Java language. I'll go back to the concepts of object-oriented programming. I'll open up mobile phone class. In mobile phone class, I had this model name string price, and this call function. Right. In temp.java, I had created the 3 objects. Hold on. I'll delete all of this. And now, with M1, M2 and M3, you could initiate the objects. The 3 objects. I could write M1.modelName as A and say M1, hold on, dot price is, I did it earlier as well, just hold on, and similarly M2 dot model name is B and M2 dot price is 20. Now each of this class is also having a call function. If I write inside it system.out.println mobile calling and the name of the mobile, the model name. Right. So when you create the object of this class in the memory, okay, when you create the objects, you created 2 objects over here. To one object M1 is pointing, to other object M2 is pointing. Right. Now what happens is that inside every object you will have a model name, you will have price, and you will also have the call function. Alright. So when you write over here M1.call and M2.call, when M1 calls the call function, okay, when M1 is calling the call function inside M1, it will print the model name of M1. When M2 is calling its call function, it will call the model, it will print the model name of M2. Inside the call function I had written mobile calling and the model number. Right. So when you run this, it will print mobile calling A because of this, because M1 is the name, model number is A, and M2 is model number B. Okay, and Technically, this is known as a non-static global variable. Technically, this is known as a non-static global variable again. Technically, this function is known as non-static function. Okay, right. Now suppose I have a variable. I have a variable known as just taking a generic variable. Right. I'm just taking a generic variable like int number of say in a mobile phone, just hold on, number of microphones. Right, number of microphones in a mobile phone. Now everyone knows that in one mobile phone there is only one microphone. There is no mobile phone having 3, 4, 5 microphones like that. If I am putting up this variable, then I'll have to initiate this variable like this. M1 dot number of microphones is 1, then M2 dot number of microphones is 1. We know that for every object this variable will be 1. Okay, right. So what we do is that we don't repeat it like this, right? We make this variable as static int number of microphones. When you make it static, what happens in the memory is that this variable is stored somewhere outside the object. Number of microphone. Okay, all the objects can access it. It's common for all the objects. It's not the property of an object any longer. It will not remain the property of the object. It will reside at a common location in the memory. It will be common for all the objects. This is what static means. Okay. Anyone with any questions, please feel free to ask. Right. And you can, in your program, you don't have to access it with object. You can simply write the name of the class, my mobile phone dot number of microphones are 1. So it will become 1 for all the objects. Static stuff can be accessed directly with the class name. Mobile phone, the class name dot the static stuff. The non-static stuff in a class, for example model name, price, this function, you can only access the non-static stuff by creating the object of the class. I hope you are getting my point. Non-static stuff can only be accessed by creating the object of the class, and static things can be accessed directly with the class name dot the variable name. Okay, right? If I have a function, for example public static void recharge. Recharge is something which is done for every mobile phone, so I am making it static, right? So I can call it, I am just taking a generic example with you, I can call it mobile phone dot recharge, right? I don't need to create the object of this class to call this static function, right? So technically this is a static function, and technically this is a static global variable. So there are two types of variables, static and non-static, and two types of functions, static and non-static again. You don't need to create the object to access static stuff, but to access the non-static stuff you need to create the object. Very simple, in very simple words, to access static things you don't need to create object, you can access it directly with the class. You do access non-static things, you need to create the object of the class. Are you able to get this? I hope you are able to. If you are not able to understand, you can let me know. Okay, not very clear. I'll tell you the crux, Bala. The crux is if you got a static keyword in front of any variable, the crux is you can access it directly with the name of the class. If you haven't got any static keyword, you need to create the object of the class to access it. For example, to access the model number over here, right, I have to create the object M1 and then access it. I'll come over to Selenium. This is the Firefox driver class. If I create the object and I write f1 dot, I get access to all the non-static properties of this class. If I write Firefox driver, the class name dot, I'll be able to access the static properties of this class. We'll see these later on, but I'm just telling you. Okay? Right? So this is the difference between static and non-static. Anybody with any questions? Nothing? Okay. I'll move forward. Fine. I'm recording the session. You will get the recorded video as well. Okay. You write, suppose now this was Firefox driver. I opened Firefox driver, took it to some other website. If you look at the documentation, you will have other drivers as well. You have a driver for Chrome. It's known as Chrome driver. Okay, it's known as Chrome driver. A WebDriver implementation that controls a Chrome browser on the local machine. Right. So if you create the object of Chrome driver over here, Chrome driver dr equals to new Chrome driver, you can launch a Chrome. Provided Chrome is installed on your machine. It should be installed, right? Obviously. So when you run this, hold on, I'll stop it. I'll comment out this. / will means a comment. It will disable the line. Right. When you run this, you'll get an error. Chrome will not open directly. Everyone will get an error. You should always read the error carefully. The path to driver executable must be set by the webdriver.chrome.driver system property. Look, when you get errors, you should not get confused. Everyone gets errors when you are learning. When even I get errors as well. Right? There is a knack to handle the errors. Right? You just need to copy the first line of the error, open up the browser, fine, go to Google and search it. That's how developers also do. Okay, you search the error and you will get the solution in Google, how to resolve this error. Okay, that is how everyone learns. That's how I also have learned Selenium. Right, you can learn Selenium of your own. It's not necessary to come over for a training, but the only thing is, in training you get my experience. Like I have been working on this tool since a long time. You get my experience. You can learn from me what you can learn yourself in probably 1 year or so. You can learn from me in 1 month. Okay, that's the only difference which this training creates. Right. Otherwise you can also learn Selenium of your own, from your own. But in the training obviously I can give you some tricks. I can tell you things faster. I can guide you. So that's the difference. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to say, that you learn it this way. When you get an error, you search it on Google and you get the solution. Okay, now over here you create the object of Chrome driver, and when you run this, you get this exception. Fine, this exception can be resolved. Right. How this can be resolved? You know, there is Chrome driver is a third-party implementation. Right. You go to the download link on seleniumhq.org, the website for Selenium. and when you scroll down you will see third party drivers. Fine. Bindings and plugins. Okay, one of the plugin or one of the browser would be Chrome browser. Fine. And you will actually see you click on this, right? Hold on, you click on this and you on the next page click on downloads and go to this link. I hope you have the latest version of Chrome 2.9. Go here and for your Windows operating system download this zip file Win32. This will also work on 64-bit Windows. Okay, you download this zip file, extract it, and you will get this file chromedriver.exe. This chromedriver.exe is required to launch Chrome with Selenium. Don't start this, no, you will not gain anything. Don't double click on it. Right, what you need to do is that you need to set a system property. You need to write over here system dot set property WebDriver dot Chrome dot driver and give the path to the executable of Chrome on your local machine wherever you have downloaded and extracted the zip file. Give that path. In Java we write /, it's an escape sequence. Fine. And now when you launch this, when you run this, you will see that starting Chrome driver on this port and Chrome will launch. Okay, you can close this, right? Okay, but the problem is that when the Chrome launches, what Selenium does it initiates this chromedriver.exe. When you close Chrome, this chromedriver.exe, it keeps on running. This is the file in your task manager. It never quits and it occupies your system resources. You can end the process from here, right? And you'll see the exception coming up. Now it's saying that something wrong has taken place. Again, if you run it, it will open Chrome. You close Chrome and you again see the exe would still be running. It will again start. You close the exe, right? So the better way over here is that once you have launched Chrome, right, after launching Chrome, say I write Chrome driver dot go to the URL http yahoo.com, and after this URL is opened, you fire the quit function. Quit function will close the browser as well as exe. Okay, so this is very important. Unnecessarily, otherwise Chrome driver keeps on running. If you run the program 10 times, 10 different Chrome driver exes they start up behind the scenes, and sometimes it also slows down the system. See that it closes, right, and you see the task manager, nothing is there. Okay, right. Similarly, I'll comment this. Similarly, there is Internet Explorer driver. Okay, I equals to new Internet Explorer driver. If I create the object, as the name says, it's for I. Fine. If I run this, it will again give you an error, because for I as well you need to download an exe. Hold on. You need to go to seleniumhq.org. Oh, sorry. Right. Go to the download section, and for I as well, the Internet Explorer driver server, you need to download iserver.exe based on 32-bit I or 64-bit I. I've got 64-bit I. I download it. Fine. And I'll keep this in, say, my eDrive temp folder. I'll extract it and I get iDriver.server exe. Right. So I need to set a system property over here as well for I system.setProperty WebDriver.I.driver, and in the value you give the path eDrive temp, inside it iDriver server.exe file. Fine. Okay. Right. Another thing, if you run this, hold on. If you run this, I will launch. See that I launches. Right. Many times I fails to launch after this as well. Okay. There can be various reasons. You need to be very careful with I. First of all, in view, zoom, make sure that the zoom level settings are set to 100%. Otherwise it will give you an error. Also, under tools, internet options, fine, go to security. Fine. At times what happens is that this scroll bar, you see that this scroll bar, in my system it's not at the same location, but it is suggested that for all 4 of these zones, right, this scroll should be at the same location. If it's at the 3rd level for local internet, it should be for 3rd level for internet, trusted sites and restricted sites. If it's not there and if it's working, it's well and good. If it's not working, then please make sure that these levels are at the same index, right? They are at this level is same for all the 4 options. Okay. So for I you have to be a little careful. Fine. Similarly, there are other drivers as well. For example, there is a remote WebDriver. This is used for Selenium GRID. When you need to run your test cases parallelly, you use remote WebDriver. Then there is something known as HTML Unit driver. I'll talk about that later on. Right. This is used for running your tests, you can say behind the scenes. This will not open any browser. Behind the scenes it will send the HTTP request to the server, get the response, and it will do the testing. Okay. In the older versions of Selenium you had something known as Android driver as well, which has been deprecated. It is no longer the part of Selenium. It is no longer part of Selenium right now. It's being moved to a separate project. They ask us to use a project known as Appium, which I just talked about. Android driver was for testing the websites on Android phone. Only the websites. Okay. Then again there was a driver earlier known as iPhone driver, which helped us to test the websites on iPhone. It's also no longer part of Selenium now. New tools have come up like Appium or so. They asked us to use those tools. Okay. So right now Selenium is not for mobile. There is another driver known as Safari driver. It is for Safari. Okay. But it is not stable. Lot of errors are in this driver. Half the things they don't work. Right. Remote WebDriver, HTML unit driver, IE, Chrome and Firefox are stable. Safari driver is not good. Okay. The question being asked is, for Firefox we don't have to use set property. Yes, you don't have to use it. It's been made like that. Okay, you don't have to use it, but for Chrome and IE you have to use. Okay, right. Now the question arises, there are so many drivers, will I have to learn all the drivers separately? If I have to click on a link in Firefox, will the procedure be different than Chrome? Will the procedure be different in Internet Explorer driver? How do I test the same website with the same drive, with different drivers? That means, how do I test the same website with different browsers? One driver represents one browser, right? I'll answer that question. For answering that question, you need to know again about object-oriented programming. You need to know about the concept of interfaces, right? Which I'll not take today. I'll take in tomorrow's class. I don't want to really make it very heavy for you, and I also need ample of time to explain you interfaces, right? So I'll not take it any further. Anybody having any questions, please feel free to ask. If you have any questions, you can ask. We can have a small question answer session. Anybody having any questions? Okay, there is a question being asked. What is a framework? Fine. What is yeah, no, sometimes consultants do approach me. I forward the resumes, right? Look, regarding the placement with Selenium is concerned, all I have known so many students who have got placed, right? It takes time, it takes effort, and you know, it takes, if you know the tool, you'll get placed. That's what I know. If you work hard, if you understand this tool, you'll get placed, right? Because what is, when do you get a job? When you have knowledge, you'll get the job. If you have the knowledge, anybody is ready to hire you, right? So now, what do you mean by a framework? Well, look, when you make scripts, these are your Selenium scripts. Yeah, Karam, I'll answer your question. Fine. Or you can say these are your test cases. This is test case 1, this is test case 2, this is test case 3, test case 4. Fine. Okay. Now, these test cases have to be executed in a serial order, one after another. Apart from that, you also want that some reports should be generated which shows us what happened when you executed the test cases. Along with that, you also want that some logs should be generated. What do you mean by logs? That what happened, a kind of log file which is generated on the server, which tells you if the script is running for 4 hours, what happened at each and every minute. Apart from that, you would also want that whenever there is an error, oh, hold on, sorry. Whenever there is an error, right, a screenshot of the error should be taken up in a file of JPG, in the form of JPG file. This should be done by the script. Along with that, you would want that your test data should be read from an XLS file or an XML file or a property file, or sometimes you also read the data from the database. You can write the Java code to connect to database. Fine. Yes, Gaurav, you can do Selenium cannot be used for database testing. You can write Java code for database testing. You can read the database. You can supply the value to Selenium from that. Okay. Apart from that, there are other things as well, right, in a framework which are required, right? For time being, just understand this. So how do you do all these things? This is something like making a framework or building a project. Okay. To collaborate between all these things, right, we use a centralized controller. This centralized controller can be test-ng, this can be JUnit. Sometimes people use BDD frameworks like Cucumber or JBehave, right? So these all tools, JUnit, test-ng or something, these act like centralized controllers. Right. What they do is that they read the data from the XML database wherever you want to have the data. They supply to the test cases. They execute the test cases in a certain order. They generate the logs. They generate the reports. They help the tool capture the screenshot as well. Fine. Selenium as a tool is only present in this much portion. This is where Selenium will come up. But the other configurational things like logging, reporting, reading data and controlling everything, collaborating everything, you use test-ng, JUnit, Cucumber, JVF. There are a lot of frameworks available. You use that. The whole thing as a whole is known as a framework. Okay, in this training we'll be doing test-ng because Selenium is more famous with test-ng. Okay, right. Question being asked is, I hope you got my point. Somebody was asking me whether I'll take up test-ng. Yes, Karam, I will take up test-ng. I want to know from very basics of Java and Selenium, which all video you prefer to do before I start. Okay, fine. If you guys want to learn from the video tutorials, if you want to join the video tutorials and then join the class later on, you can also do that, right? And I would suggest that at least watch the first, if you want to subscribe to the videos, then at least watch the first 21 modules and come to the class. Okay, at least to first 21. That helps a lot. Okay, right. So this is what a framework is. In a nutshell, in a very overview way, in a very simple way I've explained. Fine. Okay, what is Jenkins? Okay, fine. Another question being asked is, what is Jenkins? Look, the thing is, what is Jenkins? In a team, when suppose, I'm not just talking about developers, I'm talking about anybody who does development or who does testing, who's coding, right? In a team, suppose there are 4 people who are coding, right? Fine. Now everybody wants to merge their code so that a complete project can come up. Fine. So what they do is that they use a server, or they also call it a repository. Right. This repository, these days Git is a very famous repository, SVN is a very famous repository, CVS is a repository. Many of you might have heard these names. What people do is that when they work in a team, fine, they actually use these repositories. The first person goes and puts the code on the repository. The second person can merge that code, and third person can merge his code, and fourth person can merge his code, and the complete project can be put up on the repository. If a new team member joins in, he can download the code from the repository and he can start working on that code. The versioning of the code can be done on the repository, right? So people in the industry, they are using this. Okay, now there comes a problem over here. The problem comes up, suppose the code is there on the machine, on the server, on the repository, right? Person A comes and he checks out the code. That means he downloads the code from the server onto his local machine. Another person B comes up and he also downloads the code on his local machine from the server. Both of them are not aware that both of them are changing the code. Okay, right, fine. What happens after that is, person A, who is not aware that B is also changing the code, fine, he changes the code and he puts the code back on the server, and everything works fine on the server. Fine. Now person B, who had actually checked out the code from the server, is not knowing that A has already put up the code. He goes and puts his code and everything breaks on the server. And the worst part is, neither A knows and nor B knows that there has been an error on the server. When some external entity comes, for example the client whose server is there, he comes up and he tries to access it. It never works. He thinks that it might be a temporary issue. He closes everything. Everybody goes back to their homes after the work. They come back next morning and then again nothing works, and then there is a fight in the team that he changed it and I changed it and I don't know who changed it. It creates a problem. So to avoid this kind of problem, we use a tool known as Jenkins. Primarily what Jenkins does is, whenever somebody deploys the code on the server, Jenkins automatically goes and checks on the server whether everything is correct or not. If it is not correct, within a fraction of a second, it sends out an email to everyone in the team that fine, the code has broken on the server, there is some error. You guys checked in some wrong files, right? So that's what Jenkins does. And I'll talk about the practical aspect also, how it is used, right? So this is what Jenkins is. If you're not able to understand what Jenkins does, don't worry about it. Fine. Anybody having any other question? No questions, right? I'll stop here.